West Ada ran some supplementals levies way back in the 1980s, and then they stopped, and I have to tell you, I don't really know the history of why they ran them or what they used them for or even why they stopped. But the district first ran one again in 2005 in the amount of $5 million, and it was truly supplemental. We used it to hire 25 more teachers than we qualify for under the state's funding formula. So we were trying to reduce class sizes. We also used it for the one-time cost to start the International Baccalaureate program at Renaissance, and we put a little bit into one-time curriculum purchases. We ran it 2 more times after that in the amount of $10 million. We continued to hire teachers above the state salary schedule and invested a fair amount of it, again, in one-time purchases for technology. Then as the recession really started and as the state's revenue went down and school districts' revenue went down, we tried to run one in a higher amount in 2011, and it failed. And as a result of that, as we lost the supplemental that we had and as we were losing state funding, we had to make a number of significant cuts. We cut 14 school days out of the calendar. 9 of them were actually classroom days. 5 of them were teacher work and in-service days. We started charging participation fees for secondary sports. We started not hiring a lot of positions. And so in order to reduce our budget, as classified people would leave or administrators would leave, we would just often not refill their positions. And while even during the recession, our enrollment was still increasing, we just quit hiring the teachers we qualified for growth during that time. So ultimately, we were 123 teachers below what we qualified for under the state funding formula. Then in 2012, we proposed a $14 million supplemental, and it was approved. With that, we were able to restore the 9 school days. And it's been approved 2 times since then. And what we've done during that 6-year period is just continue to chip away at the other cuts that we made and haven't been able to restore entirely. But for example, on teachers, we're now 42 below what we qualify for. This year, we made a gain of about 22 teachers. We restored some high school sports that we had cut during the recession and when we lost the supplemental. So our hope is as we go forward and if the voters decide to approve the supplemental for 2 more years, we can continue to maintain our operations and programs and also continue to further chip away at some of those things that were cut and not restored. So West Ada as a district has experienced enrollment increases of about 1,000 kids per year. And so in order to keep up with that growth, going back at least to the late 90s, if not further, we've been running bonds to build new buildings. So in 96, 1998, 2000, 2002, 2005, all those years prior to the recession, West Ada ran school bonds every 2 to 3 years. During the recession, that slowed down, the enrollment increases slowed down, people's pocketbooks weren't in a good shape, and any bond that we would have run would have increased the levy rate. But since then, the growth has returned. So last year, we grew by almost 860 kids. This year, it was about 890. We are heading back toward our 20-year average of 1,000 kids a year. And what that looks like is the need to run bonds every 2 to 3 years to keep up, because that's the only mechanism there is in the state of Idaho to pay for new school buildings. I think a lot of people who've moved here, and even people who've been here a while, wonder why can't we pay for schools some other way? In Idaho, cities and counties can collect impact fees, which is a levy against new growth. School districts are not allowed to. We cannot levy any kind of impact fees. We're precluded from doing that in state code. West Ada has asked the legislature to change that in the past, and the answer has always obviously been no, or we would be doing it now. Idaho gives school districts one mechanism to build schools, and that's to ask voters to approve bonds so the school district can take out a loan to build a school building and pay that loan off over 20 years. It's the only tool we have. West Ada continues to look at other ways to fund schools besides just through property tax. But to date, and after many years of trying, this is still what we have. I guess largely because a lot of people think this is a great place to move. And for 20 years, our enrollment has been increasing by about 1,000 kids per year. It slowed down a little in the recession, but since that's ended, it's all come back. And now, across our district, we have more than 14,500 homes that have been approved to be built. And as they're built, a lot of kids are going to move into them, and that'll generate more than 11,000 students, probably 1,000 kids at a time. But when you're growing by 1,000 students a year, think of that one middle school holds 1,000 kids. Now, they don't all come in one grade, obviously, they're spread across 13 grades. But that means on a regular basis, you have to ask voters to pass bonds to build schools. It's the only mechanism the state of Idaho gives us to build schools. And so West Ada has a long history of running school bonds. We ran them in 96, 1998, 2000, 2002, 2005, every 2 to 3 years. Then the recession came. It was really hard to even contemplate running a bond then because everybody's own pocketbook was in such bad shape, and anything we would have asked for would have raised their tax rate. So we didn't. And the rate of growth slowed some, but that's all over now. Last year, our enrollment grew by about 860. This year, was about 890. We will be on track again to need to run bonds every 2 to 3 years. Right now, we have a few specific issues that we're working on. Several of our high schools, 4 out of 5 of them, are at capacity or over. We could change attendance zones some, and then they would just all be over. And our high school enrollment has been increasing by 247 kids a year, just that portion of the growth. And that includes going back to 2010 when we were still in the recession, and the enrollment increases weren't as large as they are. So we're trying to catch up on the high school. So the bond includes a high school. It includes an addition to Mountain View High School, which is more than 400 kids over capacity. It includes an elementary school in North Meridian in one of the fastest growing and one of the largest subdivisions that within a couple square miles, it by itself will generate 2,000 kids. It includes an addition to Star Elementary, one of our older buildings, but a school that's about 60 kids over capacity and grew by 40 new kids just this year alone. And then it adds a classroom to Mary McPherson Elementary, which is south of the freeway, and it's been running over capacity for years and operates some of its classrooms out of portable buildings. So we're trying to address those issues. And it's hard to keep up when you're growing by 1,000 kids a year, because in Idaho, it requires a 66 2/3% majority to pass bonds. There's only 2 states in the country that have that high of a requirement, and that's okay. Our community has been supportive of school bonds, but it comes with the understanding that this is a nice place to live, and people are going to keep moving here, and a lot of them move here with their kids because it's also a really family-friendly place to live. So it's a $95 million proposal. $60 million of it will build a new high school. $8 million will add 20 classrooms and expand the cafeteria at Mountain View High School. It will build a new elementary school that's $16 million. It will add 10 classrooms, a new cafeteria and gymnasium to Star Elementary, and that has a $7 million budget. It'll provide $1 million to add a permanent classroom building at Mary McPherson Elementary. And then there's $3 million to buy land for future schools that we'll need. If you look at the total levy rates of all the school districts from Boise to the Oregon border, West Ada's is 377 per 100,000 of taxable value. We are tied with Homedale as the lowest, and all the other surrounding districts from Boise to Valley View to Wilder to Parma and many other districts in between, theirs are all higher than the levy rate in West Ada. Once the new school opens in 2020, and actually the year prior, we will form an attendance area committee that will have to reshape the high school attendance zones. And I think sometimes there's a feeling that because the new high school isn't in the Rocky attendance zone that it won't see relief. Those days are past. We have too many high schools now, so you're going to have to build high schools that are outside of some schools' existing attendance zones, reconfigure attendance zone amongst a variety of schools to reduce overcrowding at a school like Rocky, or even a school as far away as Eagle High. So in the end, bonds end up affecting every school in the district in this way, because no one bond is going to solve every overcrowding issue that you can possibly see out there when you're growing by 1,000 students. But what happens is you run bonds every 2 or 3 years to keep up in every area of the district. I've had people ask me, well, why are you building it there? There are other places that are overcrowded. There are other places that are growing rapidly. If you look at the numbers where the homes are and where the development's going to happen, the simplest answer is it's everywhere. And in order to keep up, we're just going to have to keep building schools. So West Ada has a long history of dealing with schools that are significantly overcrowded. So obviously the enrollment's going to keep increasing. But the main thing I think people don't really realize immediately is it doesn't necessarily impact class size, because the strategy is to find yet another place to put a class. So the first thing we'll do is we'll start moving in portables. They cost about $100,000 to purchase. They cost about $50,000 to move in and then to move again. But we're trying to find alternative classrooms. So at Rocky Mountain, they have 7 portables. I believe Mountain View right now has 6. So those become another place to put a class. But as the problem gets more significant, or you can't move another portable onto a campus, then in the history of West Ada, we find other places in the school building to put a class. We've had elementary classrooms in gymnasiums. We've had them on music stages at the back of the gym. We've had them in weight rooms in middle schools. We've had them in the catwalk area of Mountain View High School. You find a place where you can put a teacher and kids before you start making the classes bigger and bigger. Ultimately, when you're just completely out of options in terms of where to have another class, then you close enrollment to schools and you just start busing kids to the nearest available school that has space. The other tool that you have in your kit bag is to redraw attendance areas. Typically what you're doing is you're just trying to reduce the overcrowding at one school and kind of balance it more with a neighboring school that may be over, but you're trying to balance the overcrowding. But again, what you're really looking for is one more place to put a kid and kids and teachers so that you can have a class.